Welcome to the Economy Magazine at I-24 News, where we provide a daily view on world markets and the global economy. I'm Natalie Ehrlich. Well, on today's show, Florida's embattled housing market makes a comeback, and Ukraine places its economic hopes on agriculture. Let's start now with the headlines. Well, Standard & Poor's affirmed Israel's international credit ratings as positive. On Friday, the credit ratings agency gave it an A+ score, also defining the economy as stable, and projected it would grow by 3% between 2015 and 2018. Still, the rating may be downgraded should the budget deficit grow beyond the government's current goal of 2.9%, or if the security situation here escalates. Well, a ream of disappointing Chinese data didn't succeed in bringing down stocks on Monday. The Shanghai Composite surged nearly 5% on speculation that Beijing will accelerate mergers of state-owned enterprises to help bolster economic growth. Still, markets digested lackluster data from the weekend. Plunging producer prices dropped to their lowest level in 6 years. And exports fell 8%, their biggest fall in 4 months. The UK's data watchdog is investigating a security breach at Carphone warehouse. Attackers gained access to personal details of some 2.4 million people after hackers successfully attacked the mobile retailer. Well, 90,000 customer credit cards may have been accessed as well. The company began notifying customers of the breach on Saturday. Greece reportedly inching now closer to a third bailout deal. Greek ministers negotiated with creditors into the early hours Monday over a fresh €86 billion loan to prevent economic collapse and also avert an exit from the Eurozone. Well, the bailout must be in place by August 20th, when Greece's repayment is due to the European Central Bank. Annika Breithart, the spokeswoman for the European Commission, had this to say.
The institutions are working hand in hand with the Greek authorities. Progress has indeed been made, and we expect further progress throughout the day and beyond as talks continue to resolve the remaining issues.
In housing news, Florida was ground zero in America's foreclosure crisis, but has since seen a resurgence.
Have you been enjoying?
Checking in on one of his growing portfolio of clients, Florida realtor Jeremy Drosen recently rented this apartment to Mark Neidig.
We were looking for a 2-bedroom and 2-bath, and most of those ran between $2,000 and $3,000. And you knew what I was looking for.
A hefty sum in Orlando, where Neidig is one of a growing number of renters. Thousands of new apartments are under construction here to meet surging demand.
2015, beginning 2016, you're going to see around 2,500 new units pop up.
Florida was ground zero in America's foreclosure crisis of 2008, but has since seen a resurgence in its housing market. This time, though, it's a different kind of boom.
2014 was really the beginning of a major shift to a renter-based society in America, which is a pretty fundamental difference from the past decades where home ownership was seen as the end-all be-all.
Now, Florida has some of America's highest rents, as residents who lost their homes in the crash look for places to live, but can't find a bank that'll lend them money to buy again. This rising demand for rentals is predicted to push prices up more than 5% in some parts of Florida this year, and low-income residents are increasingly squeezed.
Affordable housing is housing for which a person is not paying more than 30% of their income for living expenses. And in most Floridians that are low income do not have access to housing that is in that spectrum.
And in Florida's tourist economy that relies heavily on low-wage workers, the impact of rising rents is predicted to cut especially deep.
S&P's A+ credit rating of Israel over the weekend also lauded its positive trade balance, which is something we discussed in detail just earlier last week with Ofer Sachs, the CEO at the Israel Export Institute. For an in-depth look at Israel's export economy, we're joined on set by Ofer Sachs, CEO of the Israel Export Institute. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Pleasure.
So what is Israel exporting these days?
So the end of last year, we concluded by export of over $95 billion US. Most of it is still the traditional areas where Israel is well known: the pharmaceutical, the homeland security, the chemicals, and other goods. But we see very positive trends in the area of services.
All right. Well, what is Israel doing to make its exports more attractive?
So I think that we're doing many areas of activities, but I would say that the entrepreneurs by themselves are doing most of the work. They are especially concentrated in the area of extreme innovation, in the areas of high technology.
All right. Well, what are the latest trends?
So the latest trends are once again quite diverse, but I would say that we can see very strong trends towards the areas of telecommunications, especially in the services point of view. Once again, we see a lot of medical equipment and health IT. It's a very strong area, and of course cyber, which became very strong motivators of the Israeli economy.
Well, you've mentioned some of the strengths here, but what are some of the challenges currently facing the export economy?
So there are, I think that we need to take maybe a little bit, to go a little bit backwards, and we would say that we were kind of used to a very fast growth in the past couple of years. This is not the situation for the past 2 or 2.5 years, mainly due to the economical situation in the world. The world is not growing as fast as it used to. The Israeli is doing a little bit better than most of the OECD countries, and out of that, the Israeli currency became very strong, which of course have a negative impact on the Israeli export. So this is the main constraint. I would say that the second one goes to regulation. The third one goes to the fact that the world is not waiting for anybody. And we see that it's becoming more and more complicated to compete because of the other reasons that I just mentioned.
I see a very interesting point here. Israel's biggest trading partners, who are they?
So it's still very much the European countries and North America, especially the US. But we see a very strong and positive trends toward Asia, especially China and India. But over there, we're very much concentrated in goods and not in services. When we are taking out from this equation the services, or the opposite, when we take an overlook on the services point of view, we see that we are very much depending yet on the conservative market.
Interesting point here. Something to keep in mind is that the U.S. economy appears to be improving here, so that should bode well for Israel, right, and its exports of services.
Definitely, definitely. The U.S. and Israel have a very strong bonds in the area of services. We see so many multinationals, especially American ones, working in Israel. So we do see some very strong positive trends lately, and we hope to see also that the dollar towards the shekel will become a little bit stronger.
Well, let's shift gears here a bit. What about the BDS movement? How is that impacting the Israeli economy? Is this a serious threat here?
So I would say that it's more of an issue that mainly concerns the consumer goods environment, especially the areas where there is compulsory to tag your products, especially in the food and beverages, sometimes in the cosmetics area. But when we take a deeper analysis of the situation, we can't really see any kind of significant sign in this respect. We are definitely concerned, and the exporters are deeply concerned, and yet we don't have evidence that something is really happening.
All right. Well, Ofer Sachs, thank you so much for coming on the program. Very much appreciated.
Toda.
On to a different subject, Ukraine. The country is still mired in conflict, posing a significant burden on the country's economy. But Kiev is firmly eyeing the very land which it is fighting for as a means of prosperity.
It was April 6, 2014. Several government buildings in eastern Ukraine were attacked by pro-Russian activists, and today separatists still control the Donbass, a region that only covers 4% of the country's surface, but contributes to 1/4 of its wealth. In 2014, the GDP plummeted nearly 7%. To bounce back, Ukraine has set its economic hopes on the fertility of the land.
We have now completed the audit with the EU Commission, which will open the European markets to seeds produced and exported from Ukraine. We have the best climate. We have black soil. We have one of the best opportunities to cultivate GMO-free seeds.
Last year, Ukraine's crop production reached a post-Soviet record of 63 million tons. Over half of that was exported, primarily to Asia and Europe.
Trade turnovers with the EU have increased. Right now, the total export is nearly $5 billion. Our agricultural products have grown over 6% this year, despite the fact that Ukrainian exports to the Eurasian Customs Union has decreased 32% to $2.6 billion.
The agriculture minister's goal is for grain production to reach 100 million tons by 2020. But from the farmer's perspective, things aren't looking as positive. The fall in currency has made products like hardware, fertilizer, and seeds much more expensive. Combined with a global decline in agricultural prices, the Ukrainian farming community has growing concerns.
Ukraine is not, in a matter of speaking, a market maker, so we depend on the price that exists in the world markets. The situation has developed in a way that there wasn't a good price for the grains we cultivate. We got almost zero for the most of our grains.
Farmland in Ukraine cannot be sold, only rented long-term. But the government is planning to sell off its state-held agricultural businesses. Farmers are hoping a liberalization of the agricultural land market will attract investments, but many foreigners are wary of the highly corrupt country.
And now for the stories we didn't want you to miss. We have a special guest, I-24 News reporter Gabby Weiniger. Thank you for being with us today. So what did you bring?
I brought you something very special that's quite close to our hearts, women's wages and how much women are earning in the United States. So it turns out the pay gap between men and women actually starts small but gets a lot bigger, so don't get too excited yet. A new study by the New York Federal Reserve says at the beginning, when women just graduate in their early 20s and when they're aged 20 or 25, men are only earning 3% more than women, which is good news.
So they're actually starting ahead of the women when they just start?
Yeah, just about. It's really good news for gender equality, but don't celebrate just yet because the gap gets much bigger with time. So by mid-career, men actually earn a substantial premium in every major, which means that college grads aged 35 to 45 men earn about 15% more. So the gap really widens by, a good 10%, which is quite shocking, really.
And this is in the U.S.?
This is in the U.S., that's right, yes. And actually, men have a negative wage premium, which means women out-earn men early on, but by mid-career, the men pull away and earn much more than the women. So it starts good, but gets gradually worse. Actually, this all supports a new UN study on gender equality, which says millions of women around the world are still consigned to low-paid and poor-quality jobs. Let's take a listen.
Countries where, women do the vast majority of unpaid care work, they tend to have lower rates of employment and labour force participation. So, you see that economies also, suffer when they don't invest in these policies. It's a kind of, I think, in the same way that you see investment in kind of roads and so on as an investment in infrastructure, I think we should see investment in childcare services, which are nurturing kind of the next generation as an investment in our economies.
Well, she makes this really fascinating point here about what economies lose when they don't invest in women, when they're not employed, when they're not part of the workforce.
Absolutely, that's definitely true. And actually, we can maybe attribute this to men being promoted more. This is a possibility, and if that's true, that's quite a sad one. Or the fact that women are having families and they're actually suffering, and it's quite detrimental for their work career. They're having families and they're not able to reach where the men are able to, and that explains that large gap that starts small but gets so much bigger with time.
And I do remember a study that I've read a while ago that actually pointed out that countries that actually have more egalitarian societies are in fact the richer ones.
That's probably true. So, yes, exactly.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, what else did you bring for us?
I brought something much lighter, a field where women really do excel, entertainment. It turns out Game of Thrones is contributing £110 million to the Northern Ireland economy, which is great news for Northern Ireland.
How come?
Well, Game of Thrones is actually filmed in Belfast, a lot of it. So it really might do for Northern Ireland what Lord of the Rings did to New Zealand and really raise the profile, raise their economy, not only by filming in that studio, but also for tourism as well.
Oh, so they've gotten a boost in tourism as a result of this?
I would hope so. I think that's part of the reason. But actually, from 2010 to 2014, in its 5 seasons, Game of Thrones brought between £21 million and £23 million a year to Northern Ireland. And it could be because there's a Northern Irish production fund that's actually funding a lot of HBO. They've actually invested £12.45 million in the series since it began in 2010.
Well, it's certainly a very hot series all over the world.
It is.
Even
it really
here in Israel.
Absolutely.
People always ask me about it.
Do you like it? Do you watch it?
I've only seen one, and it was very bloody and gory, and that was it. I've seen it on an airplane, and that was
bloody. Yeah, it's quite gory. It's true. Let's move on. We have something else. Because maybe a lot of American teens are watching Game of Thrones, and they're not taking summer jobs anymore. So there's a new study that also says that teens are no longer doing their July summer jobs. I don't know why. It could be because they're lazy. It could be because the typical teen jobs are actually drying up. So usually they work in CD stores or Blockbusters. This isn't happening anymore. There are no Blockbusters. There's no CD stores. So that could be one reason.
Well, thank you so much for coming. You'll have to come back and deliver the next reason. Perhaps they do have more money than they used to because the economy is improving. That wraps up our show today. Stay tuned every day from the Jaffa Port in Tel Aviv. I'm Natalie Ehrlich. Thank you for watching.